video. See if that works. All right. All this technology stuff, right? It's like, what do you call Jays? Give me like a pen, a pencil, and calculator. If I read it, all right. We'll try it out. We'll see how it works. So, the French Revolution. Okay, this is our new thing, our last thing, right? So actually, we got to do a little backstory, okay, with the French Revolution. So the backstory is this. In France, 1700s, okay, in France, there's what called 3 estates, okay, or like 3 levels of society, okay? The first level of society is made up of the clergy, okay, which are like church people, okay? The second estate, okay, those are nobles, dukes, barons, viscounts, marquises, stuff like that, right? The third group is basically everyone else, right? But of the third estate, there's actually like 2 groups. There's an A group and there's a B group. A group are people who are bougie, Alexander Van bougie, right? And then there is the peasants, all the other people. Okay? So that's basically everyone that makes up France. Clergy, nobles, bougie, peasants. First estate, second estate, third estate. With me so far? Pretty straightforward, right? So in terms of population, they're like 1%, they're like 2%, and obviously these guys are like 97%. Okay, so obviously there's tons of third estaters, not a lot of first and second estaters, right? Again, makes sense? Then, wealth. The clergy control 40, the nobles control about 35, right? Which means that they only control about 25. Okay? Which means like a few people are ridiculously rich and the bulk of the people don't got no money. Right? Does that make sense? That's the way it is. And out of the third estate, this 25%, like 20% is just among the bougie. So these people are like dirt poor, they got no money. Okay? So that's kind of the backstory. In France, this is all going on. Add to it, right, that France has been involved in a bunch of wars lately that have made things really expensive because war is not cheap, right? And so France is really, really in debt. Okay? So this takes us into July of 1789. Okay? And, oh yeah, I don't need this really. And July 14th in particular, in France, will always be known, right, as Bastille Day. Okay? They go around, they sing Pompeii all the time. You know the song, Strickler, Pompeii. Okay, so Bastille. And I'll explain in a minute why it's called Bastille Day. All right. Of the nobles, actually, I was going to talk about this, but it's not that big a deal. There's like 2 groups of nobles, but it's not a big deal to know that. Same with this, it's not a big deal. Not a big deal. I don't know why taxes go over there, that's weird. What is that over there? Okay. So, it's July, it's 1789. The king, King Louis XVI, this cat right here, he needs to make more money for France, because remember, they're broke, right? But the problem is, the third estate is already paying huge taxes, all right? They don't have more money, they don't. So, he's like, what about taxing the first and second estate? But historically, they've never paid taxes. That's why everyone wants to be in the first and second estate, is you don't have to pay taxes. It's cool, right? In fact, some of the bougie would actually take their extra money, go to the king. Remember how we talked like last week, how you could buy a job, right? Like Siler wanted to go, be the royal wiper or whatever, okay? So what he would do is if you bought a job that put you into the nobility, all of a sudden you don't have to pay taxes. So if you're a member of the bourgeoisie and you got a lot of extra cash laying around because they were the richest of the third estaters, you might go spend 50 grand to get that job, which is cool because then you don't have to pay taxes anymore for the rest of your life. So it's not a bad idea. So the king is like, well, if the first and second estate can't pay taxes, and the third estate is overtaxed, what do I do for money? And everyone's like, good question. So what he does is he invites everyone from the three estates, or representatives, to come out to the Palace of Versailles to talk about it, right? So he's like, we're going to have an old meeting called the Estates General. We're all going to meet together. And if you're in the first estate, you get 100 delegates. If you're in the second estate, you get 100 delegates. And if you're in the third estate, you get 300 delegates, because there's way more of you in population. Make sense? It's all about population. So they get out there, they argue, and of course, these guys are like, you dudes pay taxes and our debt is gone. It's kind of like what like Bernie Sanders, right? Isn't that what he argued? Right? He's like, dude, if the richest Americans all just pay like 20% more in tax, our debt's gone. Billionaires are like, no, dude, we don't want to pay more taxes. We want to get rid of paying taxes. So what they do is they decide, they just argue, right? And so the king's finally like, I got a headache. Let's just go to a vote. Okay? So he says, you dudes, how do you vote? Taxing or no taxing? What do you think they vote? No, it was like, oh, we don't want to pay taxes. Taxes. How about the nobles? Taxes? No, they don't pay no taxes. So we don't want to pay no stinking taxes. How about the third estaters? Do they think that the nobles should pay taxes? Probably, yeah. They're like, dude, yeah, pay your fair share, dude. Just jump. So, who wins? The third estate, because 300 to 200, right? We can do our math? No. Because it's kind of like the Electoral College. Okay? Every estate gets one vote, no matter, as long as it's a majority. So, the vote ends up going 2-1, no taxes for the first and second estate. These guys are like, what? Electoral College is junk. They get all mad, and they're like, we're out of here, yo. And so they leave, but it starts raining. And they're like, oh no. I'm like, Lane, I just had my hair done. I don't know, let's go. So they stop into an indoor tennis court, okay, that the king had there at the Palace of Versailles. And they lock themselves in. And like, we are not coming out until we have a new constitution for France. Well, the king's like, no, I have a 5 o'clock match against like Venus Williams. We're playing like in a pro-am. It's like, I got to get in there. So he calls to Paris. He's like, hey, bring the soldiers. Get these guys out of here. Do what you got to do. So back in Paris, word spreads really quick that soldiers are going out to kill or get rid of the third estate delegates, right? People get all anxious. They're like, no, French lives matter. We need to save these people. They start rioting in the streets. They're like, no, don't go, right? And then someone gets this bright idea. I think it was like Marchand. He's like, hey, I know where there's some guns. And Brent's like, ooh, guns are good. Let's get some guns. And so he's like, follow me. And next thing you know, this whole mob moving towards this place called the Bastille. Okay? The Bastille is like a castle in the middle of Paris. Has weapons. Has prisoners there as well, too. It's also a jail for some weird prisoners that we'll talk about in a second. And so they get there. Okay? But when they get there, they have rocks, right? They can't break into the Bastille. It's a big old, However, while the guards are up on top of the castle, like laughing, and going, la, 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 right? Strickler's brother is like, hey, what's Strickler doing down there? Why is she there with all of those weird people? I told her not to hang out with those kind of people. So he gets her attention. She's like, and so he's like, directs her to the side of the castle, right? She's like, oh man, he always ruins all my fun, right? So she walks over there. Meanwhile, Trim's like, dude, where's Strickler going? I want to see what's going on. So he follows, and so I was like, I want to see what Trim's doing. Next thing you know, there's a big mob behind Strickler, so that when her bro opens the door, right, they all rush in. She's like, don't hurt my brother. Like, who? And they kill him. She's like, oops. And to make it more fun, they chop off his ears and make belt buckles out of them. They do that with all the guards at the Bastille. They cut off all their ears and have a lot of fun with them. They go in, they get their guns, and they let out the prisoners. Okay, one of the prisoners